The catalyst. The stars glimmered peacefully above Colony Theta 7, a distant outpost on the edge of known space. It was supposed to be a quiet settlement, far removed from galactic politics. But peace shattered in a single moment when the Galactic Empire sent a warning that no one could ignore. The transmission began as static, crackling through the colony's main communication hub. Then, the image sharpened. A young human child stood trembling in the center of the screen, surrounded by towering Imperial soldiers. Their dark armor gleamed under harsh lights, their faces hidden behind cold helmets. The child, no older than 6, clutched a small stuffed toy. Her voice trembled as she asked, "Why are you doing this?" The leader of the Imperial squad stepped forward, raising a blaster. The screen cut to black just as the sound of a single shot echoed through the colony. The room fell silent. Everyone in the communication hub stared at the monitor, their faces pale with horror. Within hours, the video spread like wildfire. On Earth, families sat in stunned silence as news channels replayed the chilling footage. Social media platforms lit up with outrage. Across the planet, billions of people demanded justice. The Galactic Empire had always been cruel, but this was something different. This was personal. In the heart of Earth's capital city, the United Earth Defense Council held an emergency meeting. Presidents, generals, and diplomats from every nation crowded into the war room. The tension was thick, and no one dared speak until President Eleanor Voss, a woman known for her calm demeanor, finally broke the silence. "They murdered a child," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "Not a soldier, not an enemy combatant. A child." Admiral Roland, the highest-ranking officer in Earth's military, stood. His stern face betrayed a flicker of emotion. "Madam President," he said, "the Empire believes we are weak. They think we will protest, send angry messages, and do nothing. We cannot let them think that anymore." The room erupted into arguments. Some argued for diplomacy, others demanded war. But as the debate raged, the president's gaze fell on a hidden screen at the back of the room. It showed Earth's secret weapon, a fleet of 500,000 dreadnoughts hidden in the shadow of the moon. For years, humanity had prepared for the day the Empire would go too far. That day had arrived. She stood, silencing the room with a raised hand. "Enough. They have taken one of our own. If we do nothing, they will take more. Let them see what Earth is capable of." Admiral Roland nodded. "I will mobilize the fleet immediately." As the order spread, Earth's massive shipyards, concealed in deep space, came alive. Engineers scrambled to prepare the dreadnoughts, each one a fortress bristling with weapons. These ships were the pinnacle of human ingenuity, built in secret with technology that rivaled anything in the galaxy. Meanwhile, on the streets of Earth, anger turned into action. People of every nation and background united, volunteering their skills and resources for the war effort. Scientists worked tirelessly to upgrade weapon systems, while families sent messages of encouragement to the soldiers preparing for battle. The fleet itself was a sight to behold. Rows upon rows of colossal ships floated in the void, their dark hulls gleaming under the distant sun. Each dreadnought was a masterpiece, equipped with railguns, energy shields, and experimental technologies that had never been tested in combat. At the fleet's command center, Admiral Roland stood before his crew. His voice echoed through the bridge. "Today, we make history. The Empire thinks it can intimidate us, break us, but they've underestimated the strength of humanity. This is not just revenge, it's justice, and we will deliver it." As the countdown to launch began, Earth's president made a broadcast to the entire planet. Her face was solemn, but her words carried the weight of humanity's resolve. "To the Galactic Empire," she said, "you have committed an unforgivable act. You have awakened a force you do not understand. We are coming, not to conquer, but to show you what happens when you cross humanity. This is your only warning." Back on Earth, families watched as the fleet began its journey. The sight of 500,000 dreadnoughts activating their engines sent shivers down the spines of those watching. The ships moved in unison, like a massive swarm of locusts blocking out the stars. In a quiet home on the outskirts of the capital, an elderly man turned to his grandson. "Remember this moment," he said. "This is the day the galaxy learns what humans are made of." The child nodded, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and pride. The sound of the engines grew louder, vibrating through the ground as the fleet disappeared into the void. Earth's night sky returned to silence, but the message was clear. Humanity was no longer a species to be ignored. The catalyst had been set, and the galaxy would soon feel its fire. The march of retaliation. The fleet moved like a shadow across the void, its sheer size blotting out distant stars. From every corner of the galaxy, humans aboard the dreadnoughts readied themselves for a mission unlike any in history. The Galactic Empire had always seen Earth as insignificant, a backwater planet with no real power. That perception was about to change forever. Admiral Roland stood on the bridge of the flagship, resolute, observing the tactical display. The galaxy's sprawling map glowed before him, marking the Empire's territories in red. Their first target was a communications relay stationed in neutral space, a strategic point that connected Imperial forces across dozens of sectors. If they took it out, the Empire would be thrown into disarray. "We'll strike fast and leave no time for retaliation," Roland said, his voice steady but sharp. "They'll see the extent of our power and know we're not here to negotiate." His second-in-command, Commander Area Kane, nodded. "Understood, sir. But if we take this relay, the Empire will realize we've been hiding our strength for decades. They won't underestimate us again." "That's the point," Roland replied, his gaze hard. "They need to know the price of arrogance." As the fleet advanced, tension rippled through the crews. On board the Indomitable, a young ensign named Jonah sat in the mess hall, his hands trembling around a cup of coffee. His bunkmate, a seasoned sergeant, placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "First time in a fight this big?" the sergeant asked. Jonah nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't think it would feel this real. We're going against the Empire." The sergeant chuckled, though there was no humor in his tone. "The Empire's not invincible, kid. They've just never met us when we're serious. You'll see. When those dreadnoughts fire, there won't be much left of whatever's on the other side." Meanwhile, on Earth, the world watched every moment of the fleet's progress through live broadcasts. Massive screens in city centers displayed footage of the dreadnoughts cutting through the darkness, their sleek designs exuding power. In one small town, an elderly schoolteacher held an impromptu lesson, showing her students the significance of the mission. "This," she said, pointing to the screen, "is humanity's answer to oppression. We're not just fighting for revenge. We're fighting to make sure no one thinks they can harm us again." The first encounter came faster than expected. The relay station appeared on the fleet's sensors, a sprawling structure surrounded by a modest Imperial defense fleet. The Empire's ships, sleek and menacing, positioned themselves between the humans and their target. A transmission crackled through, displaying the face of an Imperial captain. "This is Captain Vale of the Galactic Empire," the alien sneered. "Turn back now, humans, and perhaps we'll consider sparing your pitiful planet." Admiral Roland didn't bother responding. Instead, he gave a simple command: engage. The silence of space was shattered as the first human dreadnought fired its primary cannon. A brilliant beam of energy sliced through the void, striking one of the Imperial ships dead center. The alien vessel erupted in a blinding explosion, debris scattering like stars across the darkness. For a moment, there was a stunned silence on both sides. The Empire's ships hesitated, their captains struggling to comprehend what had just happened. This wasn't the weak, unorganized fleet they'd expected. These human ships were faster, stronger, and armed with weapons the Empire had never seen before. "Target their formation," Roland ordered. "Keep the pressure on." The humans moved with precision, their dreadnoughts forming a wall of destruction. Each ship unleashed a torrent of firepower, obliterating Imperial defenses one by one. The relay station itself was spared. Admiral Roland had no intention of harming civilians or infrastructure unnecessarily, but the Imperial fleet didn't get the same mercy. On board the Resolute, Commander Kane monitored the battle, her sharp eyes catching every detail. "The Empire's forces are scattering," she reported. "They're retreating toward the nearest colony." Roland shook his head. "No, they're running to warn their superiors. Send a detachment to intercept." The humans pursued with relentless precision. By the time the battle ended, the relay station was under Earth's control, and not a single Imperial ship remained in the area. Messages of victory spread back to Earth, sparking cheers across the planet. But the victory came with a chilling realization. As the fleet analyzed the relay's databanks, they uncovered classified transmissions from the Empire. The execution of the child had been deliberate, part of a calculated effort to provoke humanity. The Empire had considered Earth a potential threat and wanted to test its resolve. "They wanted to see if we'd retaliate," Roland muttered, his fists clenched. Well, they'd got their answer. The fleet continued its march, their path now illuminated by a deeper understanding of the enemy's cruelty. On board the ships, there was no celebration, only determination. Every soldier, engineer, and officer knew that this was just the beginning. Far away, in the heart of the Galactic Empire, the Emperor sat on his throne, reviewing the first reports of the human fleet's actions. His advisors were in an uproar, shouting over each other about retaliation and countermeasures. The Emperor raised a hand, silencing them. "Humans," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "They think they can challenge us. Let them come. We'll crush them like the insects they are." But even as he spoke, there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. For the first time, the Empire faced an opponent who fought not for conquest, but for something far more powerful: justice. The first strike. The human fleet pressed deeper into the Galactic Empire's territory, its movements calculated and unrelenting. From the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Roland reviewed the tactical map. Each step was planned, each target selected for maximum impact. But the next strike would not be a simple show of force. It would send a message that humanity had no intention of retreating. Their target was Outpost Zenith, a heavily fortified military base on the edge of an Imperial-controlled star system. The base was a critical hub for the Empire, supplying its warships and coordinating fleets across several sectors. Taking it would be a declaration of war that no one could ignore. "Status report," Roland said, his voice calm but commanding. Commander Area Kane glanced up from her console. "Outpost Zenith has a fleet of 200 Imperial ships stationed for defense. Their orbital defenses include high-energy disruptors and automated turrets. If we go in head-on, it'll be a bloodbath." Roland's lips curved into a thin smile. "We won't go in head-on. Let's show them what human ingenuity looks like." The plan was set into motion. As the fleet approached the system, the dreadnoughts powered down their visible weaponry and reconfigured their hulls to emit false energy signatures. To the Empire's scanners, the approaching vessels appeared to be mining ships, harmless and unworthy of attention. On board Outpost Zenith, Imperial Commander Volrex monitored the incoming fleet with disinterest. "Mining ships," he scoffed. "What a waste of our time." The Empire's fleet held its position, unmoving as the disguised dreadnoughts entered the system. It wasn't until the human ships were dangerously close that the trap was sprung. With a sudden burst of light, the dreadnoughts revealed their true nature, powering up their weapons and locking onto their targets. On the Resolute, Admiral Roland gave the command: "Fire." The opening salvo was devastating. Energy beams and railgun projectiles tore through the Imperial fleet before they could react. Ships that had stood as symbols of the Empire's might were reduced to flaming wreckage in seconds. The automated defenses of Outpost Zenith activated, but the dreadnought's advanced shielding systems absorbed the blows with ease. Inside the outpost, chaos erupted. Soldiers scrambled to their stations, alarms blaring through every corridor. Commander Volrex barked orders, his voice barely audible over the cacophony. All units, engage. Do not let them breach the perimeter. But it was too late. Human forces had already deployed strike teams, using advanced drop pods to land directly inside the base. The pods smashed through the outpost's outer defenses like meteors, their reinforced shells opening to reveal heavily armed soldiers. Leading one of the teams was Captain Elena Drake, a decorated officer known for her unwavering determination. She moved through the corridors with precision, her team following closely behind. "Secure the command center," she ordered. "We need their data logs intact." The resistance inside the outpost was fierce. Imperial soldiers, clad in their black armor, fought desperately to hold their ground. But they were unprepared for the humans' tactics. Earth's soldiers moved as a single unit, their advanced exosuits giving them unmatched speed and strength. In the command center, Volrex watched in disbelief as security feeds displayed human forces overwhelming his defenses. "This can't be happening," he muttered. "They're just humans." Before he could issue another command, the doors to the command center were blown open. Captain Drake entered, her weapon trained on Volrex. "Stand down," she said coldly. "You've lost." Volrex glared at her, his pride refusing to allow him to surrender. But the sight of his soldiers being taken down one by one on the monitors forced him to reconsider. With a growl of frustration, he raised his hands. "You'll regret this," he spat. "The Empire will crush your pathetic species." Drake didn't flinch. "Maybe. But today, you're the one who's crushed." Back on the Resolute, Admiral Roland watched as the mission report came in. The outpost had been secured, its fleet destroyed, and its databanks captured. It was a flawless victory, one that would send shockwaves through the Empire. "What did we recover?" Roland asked. Commander Kane reviewed the data, her expression darkening. "We've intercepted messages from the Empire's High Command. They're planning to deploy something called the Oblivion Protocol. Details are vague, but it looks like a contingency plan for full-scale planetary destruction." Roland's jaw tightened. "So they're willing to wipe out entire worlds to maintain control." "Typical." Kane hesitated before continuing. "There's something else. The execution of the child. It wasn't an isolated incident. It's part of a larger campaign to instill fear in subject species. The Empire wants to make an example out of us." Roland leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing. "Then we'll make an example out of them." As the fleet regrouped, the captured Imperial officers were sent back to Earth as prisoners of war. Their arrival sparked a new wave of unity among humanity. People across the planet rallied behind the fleet, their resolve strengthened by each victory. But Roland knew the war was far from over. The Empire would not take these defeats lightly. With each strike, humanity was pushing the galaxy closer to a full-scale conflict. And in the shadows of the Empire, something far more dangerous than battleships and outposts was stirring. The march of retaliation had begun, but the true test of humanity's strength was still to come. The Empire fights back. The Galactic Empire's response was swift and brutal. Across their controlled territories, fleets mobilized, factories ramped up production, and high-ranking officials were summoned to secret war councils. Humanity's unexpected assault had humiliated the Empire, and the Galactic Emperor himself decreed, "Erase them. Leave no trace." On the Resolute, Admiral Roland studied the incoming reports. Hundreds of Imperial ships were converging on the system humanity now occupied. Their numbers were staggering, vast fleets that seemed to stretch endlessly across the star charts. But Roland wasn't intimidated. He'd prepared for this. Commander Area Kane stood at his side. "They're bringing everything they've got, sir," she said. "This is no longer a skirmish. This is war." Roland nodded. "Good. Let's make them regret it." The first engagement came sooner than expected. The Empire's Vanguard fleet arrived in system. their sleek, dagger-shaped ships cutting through space like blades. Unlike the first encounters, these were not complacent defenders, but hardened warriors, veterans of countless battles. Their flagship, the Eclipse Spear, was a towering behemoth, bristling with advanced weaponry and commanded by the Empire's most feared tactician, Admiral Zarian Kreth. From the bridge of the Eclipse Spear, Kreth addressed his fleet. "Humanity has shown its teeth. Now we'll shatter them. Leave no survivors." As the Imperial fleet advanced, the human dreadnoughts maneuvered into a defensive formation. The Resolute led the charge, its railguns firing in precise, devastating bursts. The first Imperial wave faltered under the unexpected accuracy and firepower of Earth's fleet, their ships exploding in brilliant flashes of light. But Kreth was no fool. He quickly adapted, ordering his ships to scatter and target the human fleet from multiple angles. Imperial fighters swarmed like angry hornets, weaving through the dreadnought's defenses and striking at weak points. On the Resolute, alarms blared as enemy fighters scored hits against the ship's outer hull. Commander Kane shouted orders, coordinating the defensive systems. "Deploy the pulse shields. Keep those fighters off us." Roland watched the chaos unfold, his mind racing. The Imperial fleet was larger, faster, and more coordinated than any they'd faced so far. Humanity's initial victories had relied on surprise, but now they were up against a foe that had adapted. He needed a new strategy, and fast. "Send the Nemesis units," Roland ordered. Commander Kane hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, sir." From hidden bays within the dreadnoughts, a new weapon emerged, Nemesis drones. These sleek, autonomous machines were equipped with cutting-edge AI, designed to outthink and outmaneuver even the most skilled pilots. They swarmed into the battle, intercepting the Imperial fighters with ruthless efficiency. The tide began to turn. Imperial pilots found themselves outmatched, their ships torn apart by the relentless Nemesis drones. The human dreadnoughts resumed their advance, breaking through the Imperial lines with devastating firepower. But Kreth wasn't done. On board the Eclipse Spear, he activated a device that sent a ripple through the system. Human ships suddenly found their communications disrupted, their targeting systems malfunctioning. "They're jamming us," Kane shouted. Roland clenched his fists. "Switch to manual overrides. Use visual targeting if you have to. We can't let them gain the upper hand." The battle became a brutal slog, with both sides taking heavy losses. Human ships adapted quickly, their crews relying on creativity and improvisation to counter the jamming. Imperial ships, meanwhile, pushed harder, driven by Kreth's relentless orders. Amid the chaos, one of the dreadnoughts, Endurance, took a direct hit to its core. The ship's captain, a grizzled veteran named Marcus Hale, knew what was coming. As flames engulfed the bridge, he made a final broadcast to the fleet. "For Earth," he said, his voice calm even in the face of death. Moments later, the Endurance exploded, taking several Imperial ships with it. The loss of the Endurance sent a ripple through the human fleet. On the Resolute, Roland felt the weight of every life lost. But he couldn't falter now. "Focus fire on their flagship," he ordered. "Take Kreth out, and the rest will scatter." The dreadnoughts concentrated their firepower, unleashing a storm of energy blasts on the Eclipse Spear. Kreth's ship weathered the assault, its shields flickering but holding. On board, Kreth smiled grimly. "So they want to play rough. Let's show them what real firepower looks like." The Eclipse Spear unleashed its secret weapon, a singularity cannon, capable of creating a localized black hole. The cannon fired, and space itself seemed to warp and twist. A nearby human ship, the Vanguard, was caught in the gravitational pull and torn apart. For a moment, it seemed the battle was lost. But then Roland had an idea. "Target the singularity cannon directly," he said. "If we overload it, they'll take themselves out." The Resolute and its nearby ships focused their fire on the cannon. Kreth realized the danger too late. The singularity cannon overloaded, sending a massive shockwave through the Imperial fleet. The Eclipse spear was engulfed in the explosion, its wreckage scattering across the void. With Kreth gone, the remaining Imperial ships hesitated. Some retreated, while others were swiftly eliminated by the human fleet. The battle was over, but the cost was high. As the surviving human ships regrouped, Admiral Roland addressed his crew. "Today, we faced the Empire's best, and we won. But this war is far from over. They'll come back, stronger and more desperate. We need to be ready." Far away, in the Empire's core worlds, news of the defeat reached the Emperor. His rage was palpable, his throne room filled with the echoes of his furious commands. "If the humans want a war," he snarled, "we'll give them a war they cannot survive." The Empire was preparing something darker, something far worse than fleets or cannons. Humanity had won this battle, but the war was only just beginning. The turning point. The silence after the Battle of Outpost Zenith was deafening. Across the human fleet, there was no celebration, only grim determination. The Empire had shown its hand, deploying weapons capable of tearing apart the fabric of space itself. And while humanity had emerged victorious, the cost had been steep. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Roland leaned over the tactical map. He traced the path of the remaining Imperial forces retreating to their stronghold at Proxima Vex, a fortress world surrounded by defensive stations and orbital platforms. This was their chance to strike a decisive blow. "They'll be expecting us," Commander Kane said, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "After what we just did, they won't hold back." Roland's gaze hardened. "Neither will we." Before the fleet could mobilize, a transmission arrived, a message intercepted from deep within Imperial territory. It was fragmented, barely decipherable, but what they could piece together chilled them to the bone. The Empire's High Command had authorized the activation of the Oblivion Protocol. "What do we know about this protocol?" Roland asked, his tone grim. Kane shook her head. "Not much. The data suggests it's a contingency plan for mass planetary destruction. If they can't win, they'll scorch the galaxy." The bridge fell silent. The thought of entire planets, billions of lives, wiped out in a single act of spite was too horrifying to fully comprehend. Humanity's fight was no longer about vengeance. It was about survival. Meanwhile, deep in Imperial territory, on Proxima Vex, the Galactic Emperor stood in his war chamber, surrounded by his advisors and generals. The air was thick with tension as he activated a holographic projection of the Oblivion Protocol, an ancient superweapon hidden beneath the planet's surface. It was a relic from a long-forgotten war, capable of unleashing destruction on a scale that even the Empire feared. "Activate the weapon," the Emperor commanded, his voice cold and unyielding. "But, Your Excellency," one of the advisors stammered, "the weapon is unstable. If it fails..." The Emperor silenced him with a glare. "If the humans continue to defy us, the galaxy will know the price of rebellion." As the Empire's forces prepared the superweapon, whispers spread among the ranks. Even some of the most loyal soldiers began to question the wisdom of their leaders. To annihilate entire worlds was a step beyond war. It was madness. Back on the Resolute, the human fleet had intercepted fragments of these plans. Admiral Roland knew time was running out. If the Empire activated the Oblivion Protocol, it would mean the end of everything humanity had fought to protect. "We can't let that weapon go online," Roland said, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "But attacking Proxima Vex directly is suicide. We need another way." A solution came from an unlikely source. Lieutenant Zora Kale, a brilliant but unorthodox engineer who had spent her career designing experimental tech. She proposed a daring plan, using the fleet's experimental quantum scrambler to disable the Empire's planetary defenses long enough for a strike team to infiltrate and destroy the weapon from within. "It's risky," Zora admitted, standing before the fleet's senior officers. "But it's the only shot we have. If this works, we'll have a clear window to take out their superweapon. If it fails, She trailed off, the unspoken consequences hanging in the air. Roland nodded. Then it won't fail. Prepare the scrambler and assemble the strike team. The infiltration. The fleet approached Proxima Vex under the cover of an asteroid field, using the debris to mask their movements. The Empire's defenses were formidable, with layers of orbital platforms and patrol ships circling the planet like a steel net. As the Resolute reached the edge of the system, Zora activated the quantum scrambler. A pulse of energy rippled outward, disrupting the Empire's sensors and communications. For a brief moment, chaos reigned among the Imperial forces. Patrol ships collided, defensive platforms fired at phantom targets, and the planet's shields flickered. It was the opening they needed. A small strike team, led by Captain Elena Drake, launched from the Resolute in a stealth shuttle. The team was equipped with the best technology humanity had to offer: cloaking devices, advanced exosuits, and weapons designed to neutralize targets without leaving a trace. Landing undetected on the surface of Proxima Vex, the team made their way to the superweapons control facility. The planet's surface was a sprawling wasteland of factories and military installations, patrolled by Imperial soldiers and automated drones. "Stay low," Drake whispered, her voice barely audible over the comms. "We're not here to fight. We're here to finish this." The team moved with precision, disabling security systems and evading patrols. As they approached the facility, they encountered an unexpected obstacle: a group of Imperial engineers who were actively working on the weapon. Drake hesitated. The engineers weren't soldiers. They were civilians, forced to carry out the Empire's orders under threat of execution. For a moment, her resolve wavered. "We don't have time for this," one of her squad members urged. "If we don't destroy the weapon now, none of this will matter." Drake nodded reluctantly. "Secure them, but no unnecessary harm." The weapon's heart. The team breached the control room, finding the weapon's core, a massive structure pulsating with unstable energy. Zora's warnings echoed in Drake's mind. If the weapon was activated, it could destabilize the planet itself, creating a chain reaction that would obliterate the entire system. As the team set charges on the core, alarms blared. The Empire's forces had discovered the infiltration. Soldiers poured into the facility, their weapons blazing. "Hold the line," Drake shouted, her squad forming a defensive perimeter. The charges were almost set, but the enemy forces were closing in fast. Back on the Resolute, Roland monitored the situation through fragmented transmissions. "They're cutting it too close," he muttered, gripping the edge of the console. "Prepare to extract them the moment the charges detonate." The explosion. With seconds to spare, Drake's team completed their mission. The charges detonated, sending shockwaves through the facility. The superweapons core collapsed in a cascade of energy, consuming the installation in a blinding explosion. The team barely escaped, their shuttle racing through the chaos as Imperial forces scrambled to respond. Proxima Vex was in ruins, and the Empire's greatest weapon was no more. Aftermath. As the human fleet regrouped, Roland addressed his crew. "We've dealt the Empire a blow they won't recover from easily, but they're not finished. They'll come back harder, more desperate, and we'll be ready." Far away, the Galactic Emperor seethed in his throne room, his plans unraveling before his eyes. But even in his fury, he began to smile. The Oblivion Protocol had been just one piece of his arsenal. There were darker weapons still waiting in the shadows. The turning point had come, but the war was far from over. The final push. The destruction of the Oblivion Protocol sent shockwaves through the Galactic Empire. Across the galaxy, whispers of the human fleet's victory spread like wildfire. Fear rippled through the Empire's ranks as they realized their ultimate weapon was no match for humanity's ingenuity. But in the heart of the Empire, the Emperor prepared his final gambit. In a shadowy war chamber, the Emperor met with his most trusted generals. "Humanity has proven they are not to be underestimated," he said, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "But their courage will be their undoing. Activate the Eclipse Directive." The generals exchanged uneasy glances. The Eclipse Directive was a contingency plan as old as the Empire itself, shrouded in secrecy and fear. It wasn't a weapon but a strategy, a way to bring an enemy to its knees through total annihilation of their spirit. "We will turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness," the Emperor continued. "They fight for unity, for hope. Let's see what happens when hope is torn apart." Meanwhile, on the Resolute, Admiral Roland's fleet pressed onward, advancing toward the Empire's core worlds. The destruction of Proxima Vex had given humanity a much-needed advantage, but Roland knew the war was far from over. The Empire still controlled vast resources, and their next move would be unpredictable. Commander Kane approached Roland on the bridge. "Sir, our scouts report heavy Imperial fleet movements near the Orion Nebula. They're consolidating forces." Roland frowned. "They're stalling, preparing for something bigger." A sudden transmission interrupted their conversation. It was from a neutral colony on the outskirts of the Empire's control, one that humanity had quietly supported for years. The colony's governor appeared on screen, his face pale and trembling. "Admiral Roland, the Empire has attacked us. They've taken hostages, thousands of them." Roland's jaw tightened. The Empire was shifting tactics. They were no longer trying to win through sheer force. They were targeting humanity's allies, breaking apart the fragile alliances that held the galaxy together. "We can't ignore this," Roland said. "If we don't protect our allies, we'll lose the moral high ground and the galaxy's support." Kane nodded. "Agreed. But every detour delays our assault on their core worlds." Roland stared at the holographic map, weighing the impossible choices before him. Finally, he spoke. "We split the fleet. Half of us will press on to the Emperor's stronghold. The other half will rescue the hostages. Humanity's strength is in our ability to fight on all fronts." The rescue mission. Captain Alina Drake led the rescue operation, her team descending onto the colony under heavy fire. The Empire had fortified the area, using hostages as human shields to deter a full-scale assault. The sight of innocent civilians, elders, children, entire families, being herded like cattle filled Drake with fury. "This isn't war," she muttered. "It's terrorism." Using advanced stealth technology, Drake's team infiltrated the Imperial compound. They moved silently through the shadows, disabling security systems and neutralizing guards. Every step brought them closer to the hostages and to the Imperial commander orchestrating the attack. In the central chamber, the hostages were chained together, surrounded by heavily armed guards. The Imperial commander stood among them, a cruel smirk on his face. "Your friends won't save you," he sneered. "They're too busy fighting a war they can't win." But before he could continue, a small device clattered at his feet, a flashbang. The room erupted in light and sound as Drake's team stormed in. Within minutes, the guards were subdued and the hostages were freed. Drake confronted the commander, her weapon trained on him. "You've lost," she said. The commander laughed bitterly. "Have I? You think saving these people will make a difference? The Emperor has already set his final plan in motion. Your kind doesn't even see the noose tightening around your neck." Drake silenced him with a well-placed stun round. "We'll see about that." The assault on the core worlds. While Drake's team secured the hostages, Roland led the other half of the fleet into the Empire's core worlds. The journey was perilous, with every star system bristling with Imperial defenses. The closer they came to the Emperor's stronghold, the more relentless the resistance became. The core worlds were unlike anything the fleet had encountered before. Massive orbital platforms surrounded entire planets, each one a fortress in its own right. The Empire had concentrated its remaining forces here, creating an impenetrable wall of ships and weapons. But humanity had its own trump card. Zara Kale, the fleet's chief engineer, unveiled a new weapon, the Nova Array, a device capable of generating an artificial solar flare powerful enough to disable entire fleets. It was risky, untested, and could easily backfire, but it was their best chance. As the fleet approached the Emperor's stronghold, Roland addressed his crew. "Today, we face the heart of the beast. The Empire thinks they can break us with fear, with chaos. But we are more than soldiers. We are humanity. And we will not be broken." The fleet engaged the Imperial defenses in a battle that shook the very fabric of space. The Nova Array was deployed, its blinding energy wave cutting through the enemy lines. Imperial ships faltered, their systems overloaded, giving the dreadnoughts an opening to strike. The Emperor's Gambit. Inside the Imperial Palace, the Emperor watched the battle unfold. His calm exterior masked a seething rage. The humans were winning, dismantling his defenses piece by piece. But he had one last move to make. He activated a broadcast to the entire galaxy. The screen filled with his imposing figure as he spoke. "People of the galaxy, witness the cost of humanity's defiance. They cling to fight for justice, yet they bring only destruction. Today, I show you their true nature." The broadcast cut to footage of planets devastated by the war, carefully edited to make it appear as though humanity had committed atrocities. It was a masterstroke of propaganda, designed to turn the galaxy against Earth. On the Resolute, Roland watched the broadcast in horror. "He's trying to isolate us," he said. "We need to counter this. Now." Commander Kane nodded. "We'll show them the truth. Let the galaxy see what we've really been fighting for." As the fleet pressed its assault, Earth's diplomats worked tirelessly to spread the unedited footage of the Empire's atrocities. The galaxy began to see through the Emperor's lies, and alliances that had wavered started to solidify. The stage was set for the final confrontation. Humanity had reached the Emperor's doorstep, but the battle ahead would determine not just the fate of Earth, but the future of the entire galaxy. Justice and aftermath. The Galactic Emperor's fortress, located on the sprawling city world of Arcanus Prime, was a symbol of his absolute power. Massive spires of black metal pierced the sky, surrounded by a web of orbital defenses and shield generators. The Emperor had dared humanity to attack him here, confident that his stronghold was impenetrable. He was wrong. The human fleet, battered but unyielding, had carved a path through the Empire's remaining forces. Now only the fortress stood between them and final victory. On the Resolute, Admiral Roland addressed the fleet. "This is it. The Emperor thinks he can intimidate us with his walls, his weapons, and his propaganda. But he doesn't understand what humanity truly is. We don't give up. We don't kneel. Today, we end this war." The fleet responded with a unified roar, and the assault began. The siege of Arcanus Prime. The initial attack was relentless. Earth's dreadnoughts unleashed a storm of firepower, targeting the orbital defenses with precision strikes. Imperial ships scrambled to defend the fortress, but their numbers had dwindled. For every human ship that fell, 10 Imperial vessels were destroyed in return. On the surface, the Emperor's forces fought to maintain control. Streets once filled with loyal citizens were now battlegrounds as resistance fighters. Former Imperial subjects inspired by humanity's defiance rose up against their oppressors. Arcanus Prime, once the heart of the Empire, was turning against its ruler. As the battle raged, a small strike team led by Captain Elena Drake infiltrated the fortress itself. Their mission: capture the Emperor alive. Drake's team moved through the labyrinthine corridors with lethal precision, neutralizing guards and disabling traps. The deeper they went, the more they saw the truth of the Empire's rule. Prisons filled with political dissidents, children forced into labor, entire wings dedicated to experimentation on conquered species. "This isn't just a war," Drake said, her voice trembling with rage. "It's genocide. The Emperor's last stand." In the throne room, the Emperor awaited them, his black robes flowing like liquid shadow. His throne was a towering monstrosity of obsidian and steel, surrounded by an array of energy weapons that hummed with deadly potential. "You dare bring your rebellion to my doorstep," he sneered as Drake and her team entered. "Do you truly believe you can defeat me here?" Drake leveled her weapon at him. This isn't rebellion. This is justice. The Emperor's lips curled into a sinister smile. With a flick of his hand, the energy weapons activated, firing beams of destructive light. Drake's team scattered, using cover and their advanced suits to evade the attacks. The room erupted into chaos as the strike team fought their way closer to the throne. But the Emperor wasn't merely a figurehead. He revealed himself to be enhanced with ancient cybernetic technology, moving with inhuman speed and strength. He tore through walls and weapons alike, a terrifying force of destruction. Drake barely managed to avoid a devastating blow as the Emperor's fist slammed into the ground, leaving a crater. "You think you're strong because of your technology," he roared. "I have ruled for centuries. I am the galaxy's rightful master." Drake gritted her teeth, dodging another attack. "You're nothing but a tyrant." With the help of Zerakel's remotely deployed tech, the team managed to disrupt the Emperor's cybernetics. Sparks flew as his movements slowed, giving Drake the opening she needed. She aimed her weapon at his chest. "It's over," she said. The Emperor sneered. "You think killing me will change anything? The galaxy will always need someone to rule." Drake's finger hovered over the trigger, but instead of firing, she holstered her weapon. "No, you'll face justice. The galaxy deserves to see what you are." The trial. The Emperor was brought to Earth, where the United Earth Defense Council announced a historic tribunal. Broadcast across the galaxy, the trial revealed the Empire's crimes. The execution of innocents, the obliteration of entire planets, and the enslavement of countless species. For weeks, witnesses from across the galaxy testified. Former Imperial officers spoke of the Emperor's cruelty. Resistance fighters shared their stories of suffering, and humanity displayed the unaltered footage of the Empire's atrocities. The galaxy watched in horror and in awe of humanity's resolve. When the verdict was delivered, guilty on all counts, the galaxy erupted in celebration. The Emperor was sentenced to spend the rest of his days in a secure, isolated facility, where he would have no power, no followers, and no legacy. The aftermath. With the Emperor's fall, the galactic empire crumbled. Planets once under imperial control declared independence, forming alliances and coalitions. Humanity, once seen as a minor species, emerged as a respected and feared force in the galaxy. But Earth didn't seek to conquer. Instead, it used its newfound influence to establish a galactic charter, ensuring the rights of all sentient beings and creating a council to prevent another empire from rising. Admiral Roland, now regarded as one of history's greatest leaders, addressed the galaxy in a final broadcast. This war was not about power or dominance. It was about showing that tyranny will never triumph over unity and hope. "We will rebuild, not as conquerors, but as partners in a galaxy that deserves peace." A new dawn. As the fleets returned to Earth, humanity reflected on its journey. The war had changed them, but it had also united them in ways they'd never imagined. Monuments were built to honor those who had fallen, and the child whose death had sparked the conflict became a symbol of resilience. On a quiet hill overlooking the city, Captain Drake stood with Zora Kale and Commander Kane, watching the sunset. "Do you think we did enough?" Drake asked. Zora smiled faintly. "We gave the galaxy something it hasn't had in a long time: hope." As the sun dipped below the horizon, the stars above seemed brighter than ever, a reminder that humanity's journey was just beginning.